For those that haven't been involved in some of these sessions before, Innovation Bootcamp is a cycle of 6 interactive workshops within the sort of strategic innovation framework that we use. So the goal is to equip you with tools, resources, and actionable takeaways that can allow you to create an innovation impact plan. So this is step 4. And by way of introduction, for those that don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders and CRO at Ideation. I'm Jonny Fisher. Today, unfortunately for everyone here, I'm joined by some great experts, and James Grice from Eversheds Sutherland, as well as Pavlos Konstas and Julian Jordan from Chaucer Consulting. So we're going to have an action-packed day. So I'm going to do some opening remarks. I'm going to look at one of the models that we use, and just give you an example of how that works and what we do with it. And so I'll just give you a bit of a framework before James is going to talk about their global innovation journey at Everest Sutherland. And then we're going to have an interactive workshop with Pavlos and Julian, which we're looking forward to as well. So we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, which will fit in. So key takeaways, so what should you expect to get when you leave, and certainly with our follow-ups, will be how do we evaluate ideas at scale, how to quickly identify whether an idea is worth taking forward, and how to effectively deliver feedback, both negative and positive, that encourages further ideation. Really important point being encourages further ideation. And so communication is a key strand of making these types of programs work. So we'll look at what things that we can do, and good and bad, and really encouraging that sort of active participation. So as mentioned, join the conversation. For those that aren't familiar with Zoom, and the bottom bar, I think, I'm showing myself up now, there should be a chat function. You can click on it and you can put your questions in there, and we'll pick those up at the end. So let's just get started. So this is again, for those that have maybe seen this before, this is something our innovation impact plan. We've seen sort of over 100 global enterprise deployments, and this is kind of the structure that we take people through. Obviously, we're at stage 4. The previous 3 stages were at events with KPMG, BDO, PwC, where we've discussed about how to define the goals and critical success factors through to designing an innovation workflow and running an innovation challenge. And obviously today we're looking at that evaluation process. If you've missed any of these previous sessions and you're interested in getting that content or finding out more, we can send that across to you. So you don't need to have been to the previous sessions to know what's going on today, but certainly we can provide that with you if you would like to afterwards. So what's the purpose? Why do we evaluate ideas? We know that gathering ideas is just the start. Focusing your time and energy and taking forward the right ideas is the most important part. I often refer to ideas as kind of like a vanity matrix, or a vanity metric. You can collect lots and lots and lots of ideas, but if you don't do anything with them, then there's no value, there's no outcome. So we're just saying, how do we evaluate ideas? It's essential to have a decision-making system in place to make sure we get the right ideas and they're efficient and effective as possible. So how much will an idea cost to implement and run, are some of the things that we'll look at, or one of the important matrices you might want to consider. What impact will it have on your business? Again, really, really, really important. How long will it take to implement? What are their timelines? And does it align with your strategic goals? So is it something we actually want to do as a business? Because we can have great ideas, but they might not be right for our organization. So these are all things that we want to consider. So what is an idea evaluation matrix? It's something we're looking at. I'm just going to show you and talk you through a really simplistic model. I'm doing it against 2 ideas. We're going to share this afterwards, so don't worry too much, although it's fairly simple. So obviously a matrix is something that allows you to rank each idea, and based on a score it receives for varying criteria. We put in some criteria here across time, cost, potential impact, monetary impact. These can change, these can be added to, and these can be simplified. Not all ideas should necessarily follow the same process either. So depending on how we bucket ideas, even before we start this, we might want to have slightly different models in place. So if you've just completed an innovation competition or a challenge, you might have hundreds of ideas to evaluate. Firstly, if you're using technology, you probably want to filter a lot of those ideas down. So you can put hundreds of ideas through this, but you don't want to look at every idea. Every idea will probably be too time consuming. So again, how do you use potentially technology to refine this? So once you've got your matrix, once you've got your ideas, then you can start to plot them in the actual matrix itself. So the first thing to do is to decide what are the things. So we talked about for time, cost, potential impact, and monetary impact. we talk about rate the criteria. So you need to establish a rating scale or a criteria coefficient. Scale for us, very simply, we'll have 1 as low importance to 5 of high importance. And of course, I would encourage you to have a scale and a key for your matrices so people understand what's happening. So the first thing that we do is obviously the time and cost, and just to touch upon those. So time is clearly how much time it will take to plan, implement, and produce results. The cost is what will actually take to bring it to life. A high cost doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it requires a bigger potential impact in order to be considered, as does monetary impact. And not everything, well, everything can effectively boil back down to monetary impact, but it doesn't always have to. So just because we have a very high time, very high cost, it doesn't mean it's a bad idea if the potential impact is high. But we also need to consider what it will do to our business, and then that's how we link it back to our strategies or our goals as an organization. So we've got our criteria coefficient, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 5. We're sort of scaling these ideas as we go through. And what we then do is actually look at how each idea scores against each of those. So as you can see, we've just sort of populated this for you. And then quite simply, you multiply the criteria coefficient by the idea score itself, which gives you a weighted rating. And we can do this against each idea. So what we're looking at is a total idea score that will allow us to see which ideas we should rank based on what we're assessing against. This works a lot easier when you're running against a project or you're running against a challenge, because what you find is you're rating ideas against a similar output. It becomes slightly more complex where they're trying to do different things. So again, that's why it becomes very important to link back to your strategic objectives. So once you've calculated the weighted score, it's simply a matter of adding it up, and then we can rank and rate those ideas based on a scale within Excel or whatever we might want to use. So really, really quick sort of synopsis and summary, rushing through that because it's fairly simple. We're obviously going to share it with you afterwards, but wanted to get to the good stuff as quickly as possible. So the key purpose of this matrix, of course, is to allow you to prove an invaluable decision-making tool to find the best and the most workable ideas based on what you can see. So thank you for listening, and going to hand over to James Grice, who's the innovation lead at Eversheds Sutherland.
Thanks, Jonny. Yeah, afternoon or morning, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. So my name is James Grice. I'm the innovation lead at Eversheds Sutherland, and I look after our service design and process improvement team. Part of that team is focuses around creativity and innovation, and a big chunk of that is around idea management, which we lean heavily on Idea Drop for. And what I wanted to do in today's session, and I'll try and keep the time short so we can get over to the exciting stuff that Chaucer have got lined up for us as quickly as we can. I thought it would be useful just to give you a bit of background about our journey with Idea Drop and how where we've gotten to today, but then to focus a little bit more on how we structured Idea Drop, the roles that we have in the business to manage it, the process that we go through, when we're sort of passing ideas through the organisation, and then to be quite honest about some of the challenges we've faced and how we've worked with Idea Drop and actually with Chaucer to try and tackle some of those. So I thought that would be hopefully interesting. And I think, if you've got any questions at any point, please, as Jonny mentioned, throw them in the chat or feel free to reach out to me after the session. So I'll start with a very brief background on how we got to where we are today. So we launched Idea Drop within our organisation in June 2018 at our Global Partner Conference. We then rolled out the application firm-wide to our international offices and to our US offices in October of the same year. And this whole project was sponsored by our co-CEOs, Lee Ranson and Mark Wasserman. In terms of where we're at today, we have 2,677 active users as of yesterday. That may have gone up. We have 1,176 ideas dropped, and 32% of those have come against challenges that we've set the organisation. And our challenges typically are focused around our strategic plans as a firm. We've implemented 70 ideas so far, with 400 still going through the review process, and I'll talk about why that's a bit of a problem for us in a moment. But I thought I'd highlight one of the big ticket ideas and just talk about one of our biggest challenges. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a snippet from the Lawyer website and an article that they wrote about our Techtember training month, which we ran last September. Techtember for us was about training our lawyers in both our UK and international offices on the use of legal technology and how they can have open conversations with their clients about legal tech and trying to give them confidence to do that. that particular idea or that event was born out of Idea Drop, and it's probably the biggest idea that we've had come from the platform to date. It was a global event that we ran, incredibly well received, and the idea actually came from our business. So our business users put that forward, we developed it with them, and then we ran that across, like I said, a number of offices. I think it was 22 offices in total across the globe. On the right hand side, you can see a summary of the best challenge that we've posted to date. So this one came from our CEO and was actually posted to our international business. So we separate our organization where you're either in the US or you're international. So that's how we divide ourselves up. This idea actually garnered nearer 150 ideas, but unfortunately a number of our Idea Drop users failed to link their idea to the challenge. But even so, you can see the response rate there. It was much more than we'd anticipated and created an awful lot of work for our curating team who looked after that particular challenge. So that's sort of a very brief whistle-stop tour of where we are today, or how we arrived at today. But what I thought would be useful is to tell you how we've structured the platform and how we've set ourselves up to manage Idea Drop and manage our innovation approach. So first of all, I thought I'd talk to you briefly about the roles we have within Idea Drop and within our innovation management setup. So first of all, top of the list there, innovation leads. These are senior individuals from our practice groups or our international operations departments who have been put in charge of our innovation effort. I won't read every one of those lines out. I believe the slides will be circulated after the event if you'd like to read this in more detail. But ultimately, they're there to engage their practice group or their department with innovation and the work that we're doing, as well as driving new challenges from their practice group leads or their team leads. Supporting the innovation leads are our curators. Their job is to more actively monitor Idea Drop and the ideas that are coming through, to get involved in those ideas, use the social elements, comment, like, rate, etc., and to engage more people around the business. So using things like the @mention functionality to alert people in the business to interesting ideas. And then, of course, they work with their innovation lead to progress those ideas through our idea journey. But both of them are responsible, both those roles are responsible for working with other people performing those same tasks across the business. So critically, making sure that we are engaging as a firm rather than doing innovation in pockets, and making sure that those bigger ideas are surfaced to all relevant areas of our organisation. To support those roles, we then developed a fairly simple pipeline, and we used the Idea Drop's pipeline feature to manage this. So all of our ideas start their life in live, and our curators own that process. And typically we advise them to perform a weekly review. We like to hold ideas in the platform for roughly 4 weeks, just to let them breathe and to see what kind of social following they gather, what kind of ideas are born out of the original idea and how that idea grows. And then eventually those curators will move that idea into a review state in which their leads become involved. And again, typically we do those monthly, but each team does them slightly differently. They're deciding in that meeting whether or not to take that idea any further. Does it need to be a further investigation? Do we take it forward from a feasibility point of view? Or can we get that straight onto that and deliver it? And of course, the one missing list on here, or status, is the archive status, where all the bad ideas go to die. And ultimately they're aiming for implementation. That's what we want, and that's what we work towards, but we've had some challenges along the way with that. Finally, I want to just touch on our challenge process, so how we support our teams in developing the right kind of challenges for our organisation. So we start off with our problem identification workshops. We offer that to our business teams if they want it, and we use design thinking techniques to draw out opportunities from the problems that our business areas believe they're facing. We then use some best practice guidelines to write those challenges, and then we've been leaning on Idea Drop a little there to review those challenges and give us feedback to make sure they're as good as they can be. And then we move to communications and thinking about how we communicate that challenge. What we don't do is just drop it on the platform and hope that people see it. We of course we post it on the platform, but we also then make sure to advertise and promote that challenge wherever it's appropriate to the audience that's going to see it. So if it's a firm-wide challenge, then it goes all over our intranet. If it's practice group specific challenge, it goes in the practice group newsletter or something like that. Then, of course, we make the challenge live, and then there's a couple of steps that we follow after that. We first of all make sure that some sort of post-challenge review takes place before finally supporting those areas with the implementation of their ideas. And we might do that through project management skills we've got within our team. We might help them write a business case or garner stakeholder support and engagement. which all sounds great, and hopefully I've painted a picture of perfection there, and it sounds like we've got this cracked. But the reality is a little different. No process like this is perfect, and building an innovation culture takes time, and it's not without its bumps. So I thought I'd share a couple of challenges that we came across, and how we arrived at them. So in January this year, so a year after we launched, I actually spent some time locked in a room with Julian from Chaucer, who's on the call, and Callan from IdeaDrop. I think it was probably more challenging for them than it was for me. But in that 4 hours, we went through our entire implementation of IdeaDrop and our broader innovation culture. We looked at what was working well, and where we were having our problems, and where we were getting, I say negative feedback sounds really, really negative, doesn't it? But where we were getting that feedback from our business that things could be improved. And what we came up with were a number of areas of focus, but I've picked out the two bigger ones for us to share with you today. The first of them was a bit of a bottleneck, really. So, and our 400 ideas in live probably tells you that we haven't quite cracked this problem yet, but we're working towards it. We found a lot of ideas were getting stuck at that under review stage, or getting from live into that review stage. And the real reason for that was really around resource and investment. So a lot of our teams were finding ideas that they thought were good, they wanted to take forward, but they had no real idea how they were going to achieve that. They hadn't got enough budget that year, or resources already allocated to other projects they'd committed to the business that they would deliver. And that was a problem for us. The other aspect was really around detail and sort of ownership and volume of ideas. I'll touch on volume again shortly, but we certainly found early on with the platform that there was a bit of a drop and run mentality with some of our users. They would come to the platform to suggest their ideas or their thoughts around improvements, but they wouldn't necessarily be interested in following that through to completion, and would expect somebody else to do it. So that was another challenge there that we looked to tackle. To deal with the resource and financial side, we made a small tweak to our process. So I talked you through these steps just a second ago, and this is the fully fleshed out version of that document. On the left hand side, you'll notice we've now got an innovation board. We didn't have that in phase 1 of IdeaDrop, and that was an absence that was sorely missed, so we fixed that now. And down the right hand side of the document, we then provided the curators with a series of questions to try and help them to make quick decisions on what to do with an idea, to try and unlock that backlog of ideas. So something as simple as, at the live stage, before I can progress it to under review, do I have enough information to review that idea? If I don't, then push back, ask for more. And if you don't get it, we empower them to archive those ideas or move them out of the queue. And there's a number of questions there that you can see, very simple questions, things that you might think are a no-brainer, but we need to provide that support. The innovation board, I'll take you into a bit more detail, really kicks in around that feasibility stage. And behind there, we have a fairly simple process flow, but it helped those curators, again, to manage those ideas through the journey. So first of all, if the idea has reached feasibility, we ask ourselves the simple question, is it a viable idea? Does it make sense to do it? Can we do it? Is it even doable? If the answer is no, then of course that idea, unfortunately, has to go to the archive. If the answer is yes, then we then ask the teams, does it benefit or affect multiple areas of our business? If the answer is yes, then I'll talk about how the innovation board works, but that's where it's going. If the answer is no, then the second question is, do we have the required budget and or resource to deliver it? Again, if the answer to that is yes, then we encourage our users to crack on and implement that idea. But if it's not, if we don't have that resource or budget, then we take a concept slide or our idea forward, essentially, to our innovation board for review. The innovation board has a few powers that we've enabled them with. So the first one is the purse strings. They can dole out money where it's needed. We've got, oh, thanks, Nick. We've got ideas required, the idea requiring a POC. So if it requires an idea, then, if it requires investment and a POC to prove the value of that large scale idea, then we can unlock that for them. The innovation board has the power to fund that. And if that idea then is successful, that POC is successful, then the idea can be added to our demand management pipeline and considered for investment in the next financial year. If the idea is a small idea, again, they have the power there to assign money and or resource to deliver that idea. And it just has helped to unlock a number of those blockages in our pipeline. The other problem, which I imagine we're not alone on, is the quality versus quantity piece. And there were two sides to that. The first one was around the quality of an idea. So our senior management at least felt that the quality of ideas coming through the platform in the early stages was not really the level that they were looking for. They were looking for more strategic alignment. And a lot of our ideas that were coming through were more quality of life changes, small incremental changes, which we acknowledge need to happen. They have a big part to play in building that innovation culture. But I think the expectations of our leadership team were slightly mismatched with the reality of what was happening on the system. So we thought of a couple of ideas to help with this. The first one was to provide an incentive. So incentivizing a certain stage in that process being reached, and we attributed that to feasibility. We felt that would encourage more thorough filtering by our curators and leads in terms of ideas that made it through that far, forcing them to be a little bit more critical in the way they manage those ideas. But it also encouraged our business users to drop ideas with a greater level of detail and more thought being added to those ideas to give it a better chance of getting through. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, we introduced this idea of the concept slide and that presentation to the innovation board that gave the curators and ideas and the ideators, an idea of what they needed to do when collaborating on an idea. And slightly craftily also discourage people from simply dropping ideas and running away, because if they knew that ownership and presentations may be involved and further input into the project to deliver their idea was required, they may be less inclined to just drop and run with those ideas, which we know would reduce the volume of ideas, but hopefully drive up the quality of those people truly committed to delivering that change. And then the last one was around our curators struggling with the volume. And that's still a problem for us today. We haven't quite cracked that yet. A lot of it is to do with time. We're very busy at the moment as a business, as I'm sure many of you are, dealing with the pandemic and all the changes that that's bringing about. But providing our curators with objectives around innovation is certainly helping, because they're able to give more time over to the work that we need them to do. We've also encouraged the teams where volumes are highest to recruit more people into those teams as curators and grow their numbers. We had one team who were regularly hammered with ideas, who had one curator trying to do everything. So we talked to them and said, look, you need more people, bring somebody in. And they've done that, and it certainly eased the load on them. We've provided additional training and mentoring to our curators. And then the last one there around innovation hours, a bit more challenging. I don't know how many of you work in a law firm, but creating those innovation hours, we are working on. It's a conversation in progress, but to try and help those curators based in our practice groups, we need to give them some way to record their time and benefit from the time they're spending on innovation, rather than thinking about the billable hour. So that's just a quick fly through some of the challenges that we faced, how we're trying to address them. There's a whole load more that we've been doing, and we've had some great success with some of the changes that we've implemented as well. It is a journey. It's a long road for us. We're committed to building this innovation culture. I think we're on the right path now, but I think it's one of those things that you have to be willing to iterate on and be open-minded to that change. That's what we're asking our users to do when it comes to sharing their ideas with us. So I think we have to be open-minded to that as well when developing our own process for managing innovation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. That is, really insightful and really helpful. And I think probably one of the big things that resonates is the journey piece. And you're absolutely right, because there are so many different ways that this can work, and there's so many different ways that you can take it. And equally, you learn as you go. And that's part and parcel of what innovation's around. So I think some real open and truthful lessons as well from James, which is great, which is it's not easy, but as long as there's a commitment to doing it, then we will get there. So thank you very much, James. I appreciate it. Subsequently, I've lost my introduction document, but I don't think I probably need it to introduce Pavlos and Julian, who are joining us from Chaucer. They have a very exciting workshop, and I'm told we'll be able to interact. But just as a reminder, please do drop any questions into the chat function, which you'll see in the bottom bar, and we'll aim to get to those at the end and go from there. But thank you again, James, and over to Julian and Pavlos.
Great, thank you very much, Jonny. So Julian and I are going to talk about the baseline of Jonny's and James' pieces, which is basically, why do we innovate? Why do we even go into this process? Is it to and obviously the answer is to achieve something, is to innovate what we do, what we offer, not just to do it for the sake of it. And that's what we're going to explore together. So to start with, a few things about Chaucer. So we've been around for a bit over 30 years as a full stack digital consultancy. My name is Pavlos Konstas. I'm heading the innovation practice at Chaucer, which consists of a bit over 40 fantastic consultants that they're focused on delivering for clients, particularly when it comes to setting up the innovation strategy and corporate structures required to enable innovation, as well as helping clients managing the flow and of innovation to actually get to a result, which we're going to talk about more later. And then being design coaches for our clients and preaching design thinking as a means and techniques to an end to enable innovation, as well as helping them blueprint and design products and services. And Julian?
Yeah, hi, it's Julian Jordan. Like Pavlos says, work part of the innovation group within Chaucer. So I run the innovation strategy and innovation flow communities and also our business design community, of which there's a huge amount of overlap because of the need to come up with ideas and then how does that physically impact your business or your function. And we're going to talk to you today about how, in fact, a couple of the questions that have come up, I'm hoping we're going to address in a little while. So if we come to those as we go through, you'll see. But we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end as well to allow time to some questions.
Perfect. We're going to be using Menti today to make this as interactive as possibly we can for an online workshop. So you don't need to memorize the code. We will show it again. But when we go into Menti, if you can go to menti.com and type that code, you'll be able to answer questions live and to have a good interface that will spark a conversation. So starting, so we are here to talk about ideas, right? And the reason we are here to talk about ideas is because there are many. And there are many ideas, however, not every single idea, and I think James touched on that earlier, is the right idea. So ideas are good, but good ideas are the important ones. And many organizations have taken innovation to be focused around the identification of ideas. And particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a number of organizations that they are rushing this innovation course to come up with these ideas. However, what are we doing with that? And having heard the challenges that both Jonny and James addressed and introduced, the question is: Are we as an organization setting the relevant challenges for our people to come up with the good ideas, so that we are able to actually focus where there is value for us? At the same time, are we actually improving the way that ideas are coming in and the way we test them and the way we iterate on them? Because there has been an exponentially high focus on how do we capture ideas, but not much thought of what we do after that, which is again what this discussion is about. How do we evaluate ideas? How do we make sure that we crystallize and we demystify what's important for us and we get it and we test it and we go with it? And finally, how do we provide timely feedback and communication? How do we move forward with what's important? And a lot of corporate energy is expended on servicing the idea of innovation and preaching innovation, but not actually focusing on really innovating, on really producing something. And regarding challenges that we faced with a lot of our clients, I think we can buckle them up into three main areas. The first is that we simply don't generate enough ideas. They aren't good. The ones that come in, we feel we're missing something. And there are two key elements there. First is the cultural element, that transformational element that Jonny talked about earlier. Have you embedded the right culture in your organization for your people to be empowered and invested in actually thinking about how to take this organization forward? And secondly, has to do with you as an organization, have you actually set a very close alignment on what's important for you? What are the top 3 priorities that you've set to address in the coming year, so that people know where to focus when they try to think about new ways of doing things? The second is about, we generate ideas, but they just, they just disappear in the bureaucracy, in the process. And that's a very common observation. And the reason it's common is that traditional enterprises, they are good at creating processes. And processes are good if they can facilitate an outcome. However, most of the times processes become a bottleneck to facilitating the outcome. And as a result, we lose track of where is what. And people get disincentivized. Idea owners, they fail to have an invested interest in that because they know that this is not going to get anywhere. And all the initial sparkle that an organization may have created is going to go away. And obviously what Jonny mentioned before, and James as an example, the evaluation framework and an evaluation framework, like the one of Idea Drops, is able to address these first 2 challenges. And the third challenge, which I think is more fundamental in terms of approach, of an enterprise approach, is we had a great idea. It was amazing. We managed to fund it. We managed to build something with it, but it didn't actually deliver anything. And then it goes back another step. Are you in contact, in frequent contact with your users, the ones who are in need of what you're trying to come up with? Have you checked with them what they need and what they, in terms of what looks good on paper and what looks good in a committee? And it's more about that user centricity and that cultural and design curiosity that an organization needs to have to be able to develop on the one hand, but develop things that they are, I think Jonny mentioned and James mentioned about the feasible, viable and desirable. The desirable element is particularly important because something may be feasible, you will be able to do it. It may be viable, you may have the means to do it, but if no one wants it, there isn't actually a value at the end of it. And trying to not to stop the monologue here. So we are going to jump into Menti, and I'm going to do that on the screen. So don't worry, you'll be able to see the code again. And we're going to see dynamically and your experience. Why do you think ideas fail? And what are the key reasons? But also, why do you think ideas are not getting picked up? And with that, let me go into Menti. And I'll give you 20 seconds to log into the tool. The code is 9964416. And we're going to capture the answers of these 2 questions first, and then we're going to go back to the answers to have a discussion about. And we strongly encourage you to unmute at that time and collaborate. And so, what are the key reasons ideas fail to get traction in your organization? And this is a word cloud, so you have up to 3 entries per person. Please keep it to 1 to 2 words an entry. That way, hopefully, Menti's magic algorithm will create something nice that we're able to see commonalities. In case you're not able to access Menti, let me know. Oh, I see first answer. That's great.
It works.
Yeah. Okay, 7 people so far. I'm gonna leave it open until we go to double digit.
If you can go to menti.com, menti.com.
I'm not able to have a look at the question, so Julian,
No,
thank you for helping out.
Thank you, Jonny. And then the code you should hopefully be able to see at the top of the screen, which is 99 64 41 6. Thanks, Jonny.
Great. So we have 13 people. Let's make it to 15.
Quite as you would expect with the word cloud, the size is kind of indicating the popularity of a response.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move to the second question, and then we're going to come back to discuss the results of this one. So the second question is, why do ideas are not getting picked up and worked on in your organization? And this is a speech bubble. So here you can write a longer response if you need to. It doesn't need to be a one word, but not the whole paragraph either.
Yeah.
Very nice. Already 11 answers. Great. And here, yeah, you can have as many as you want. That's why probably we see 20 already.
I think it was 30 each, yeah. But,
yeah.
Excellent.
Great. Okay. So let's go back into question number 1 and the answers that we've had. Okay. So I see here, obviously, predominantly ownership. And I imagine you're talking about ownership of an idea. Would somebody who wrote ownership, would you like to take the floor to explain to us a bit more of the particular reasons, ownership reasons that you've identified in your organization?
Excuse me. Hi, it's Liz Miller here from DAC Beechcroft.
Hi.
Yeah, from my point of view, it was very much lack of ownership, which I suspect you've realised from the next slide. But it's the drop and run mentality. You know, as mentioned previously, really, people think that they've got a great idea, but they don't want to do anything about actually delivering it. They want someone else to do it for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a very common characteristics, and I think it matches very well with what James mentioned at Eversheds, the fact that, you know, we want ideas, but we want ideas coming together with people that they have the ability and the willingness to devote time to developing them, because as you say, very easily somebody is going to drop an idea on in a survey or an idea drop, or whichever means we launch in a hackathon, because an idea is easy and perhaps you have already thought about it. However, implementing the idea is key, and there are ways that we can empower ownership, which is, for example, as James mentioned, for a law firm, it is freeing up time. And it's not only for a law firm, but for a number of organizations, is, freeing up time for these people and time that is being recognized and valued to be able to develop these ideas is going to enhance ownership, because people will have an incentive to do so, rather than fearing that devoting time to innovation might result in getting a bad feedback or falling below their target, or whatever other concern they may have. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Anyone else, please? Julian.
I know, I was about to move on to sort of another area within that's showing. Yeah. If anyone else has anything on ownership before I jump in.
Yeah, I think we had, was it Aisha? Apologies, it dropped, raised their hands.
Yeah, I think just from my perspective as well, is on the ownership, I can't remember what I was going to say, to be honest, is that, it is the drop and run, and people don't want to develop that idea any further, but they don't necessarily understand what problem they're trying to solve. They've just got an idea. they don't understand that that idea actually needs to solve a problem.
Yeah, and that definitely also ties in to the alignment piece that we talked about, and that's for the organization's front to actually communicate very closely what are the top priorities for the organization, so that people know that, okay, if I am to be creative, let me think about something that makes sense for my company, not just for me. And this way we will be able to generate valuable ideas, not just ideas. So the second one I see here, Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, because I say it's budget, fear of failure, and communication.
Yeah, there's two that kind of show up. There's finance and budget, which are referenced in there. And there's the culture around, not built into the culture, fear, which is kind of the opposite of what you'd want. Distracted focus, no platform to discuss. So there's a number of things there that are kind of showing through as somewhere along the lines, the idea of innovation, the idea of culture, the idea of trying things, experimenting, being able to fail and learn from the mistakes is not coming through. And again, that to some extent is tied back to some of the discussion we just had around ownership. It's also tied into finance and budget, because if you don't have that in place, you're going to struggle to actually do much with it in the first place.
Okay.
Can I offer something that appears to be missing from that slide?
Sure.
I'm Steve. I work for the NHS.
Hi, Steve.
So I think not getting buy-in in an organization is often a key reason. So if you don't get buy-in with the finance, the leadership team, the communication team, that's when I think people, if they don't buy in because there's a lack of ownership, then it's just an idea.
Yeah, of course, and buying is critical, and definitely top-down buying is going to help cascade the message. And James mentioned how the co-CEO of Eversheds launched a challenge, and people are incentivized if they see their CEO or the COO being involved and invested and interested in it and passionately communicating. It's going to have a great impact on how they perceive devoting their time. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so we go into the second one because I'm also conscious of time. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to scroll 3 times and let's select one and see. So it says teams are already working on too much and don't know what the priority is. So these is exactly the alignment and the priorities and the right challenges that organizations need to expose to their people to actually guide them on where to focus. Conflicting priorities, lack of ambition, again. And definitely I don't want to, I see funding and lack of funding, of course, and this is tied to the buy-in that Steve mentioned. The fact that having a leadership buy-in in an innovation endeavor will bring that structure, will bring the necessary funds, will bring that necessary push to make it a priority for sure. So current staff is extended and focused on the full plate in front of them. New ideas are hard to implement in our fragmented infrastructure that we've outgrown. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, it is, you know, innovation, keeping up with how the organization grows, and by grows also complexities grow, different ways that departments and sub-organizations grow. Innovation needs to keep track with these organizational change, and definitely if one outpaces the other, again we're going back into the different priorities that people have. Okay, so I want to leave some time for questions. So in that case, I will go back into the presentation and very quickly very lightly touch upon the evaluation of ideas. And I'm not going to touch too much on that because Jonny and James did already. The first and the top one is a textbook evaluation. innovation, evaluation of ideas and innovation, which is to go through these steps. However, sometimes this becomes a bottleneck. So always our approach is these flexible waypoints. As James mentioned in Eversheds, they had to change that funnel to adapt it to, because things were not working. So the flexible waypoints provide the same structure and the same security, however, allow you to define what's important, at which step along the way you need to send check, and what data do you need to make a decision. For example, a client of ours, instead of an MVP, they have an MAP, which stands for Minimal Awesome Provocation. And it's basically similar to, as James mentioned, like a concept slide aiming to provoke stakeholders to invest time and money into that. And I'm going to pass it on to Julian to talk about matrices and the goals that we need to have.
Thanks, Pavlos. And this slide is very much, it's about the idea filter. And I was going to focus mainly on the middle bit and the last point, but there's something that's come up in all of those comments that you created through Menti. The innovation strategy, the creation of what your goals are for innovation within your organization, and the metrics you use to apply that and to deliver on that innovation strategy seems to be a big stumbling block for many of you who wrote that down, or you've certainly seen that it has been a stumbling block in the past. You may have got past that point now. So I think there's an awful lot to be done, and this is not the time or place, but there is a lot around setting innovation strategy and your goals and metrics up front. What we've seen and what we've heard, tooling, we've got our big filter, we've got our pipeline, we can set the challenges. One of the things you should be looking at particularly is co-development, co-creation. So this is not a drop and run that both James and Jonny referred to. You're creating a single idea and then just running away from it. This is about taking an idea because you've seen a problem or you think there's something might happen, but leaning on other people to kind of help enrich it and see it from different points of view. The assessment matrix, I appreciate I'm rushing slightly here, just trying to get through some time, but the assessment matrix is something simple that Jonny created early on in the slides, or maybe something considerably more complex, depending on what you're trying to do. And you need to understand how you communicate at each stage of that process. The reward step that James put in for Eversheds I think was really important. And that doesn't have to be a major monetary thing. That could be like a coffee voucher. I know you appreciate it in the office, but you could, like have a voucher to have a free coffee at your local coffee shop or coffee bar. It could be slightly more. It could be something like a small value Amazon voucher. But there's something quite useful about generating enthusiasm because you've got an idea that has gone through to an acceptance point. And again, the whole point of all of this is tying your metrics, your matrix, and your messaging, your communication together very closely so that people can start to see why it's happening, why things might be rejected, and building up that innovation culture as you go forwards. On the right-hand side, we see we've got aims, we've got our scoring, we've got our messaging, but how do we get into momentum? And hopefully this next slide starts to discuss a couple of the points that somebody raised on the chat very early on. Building momentum. We've talked quite a lot about the innovation strategy itself and the measures. The important element here is that even with a robust process, do you know which ideas you're going to back? If you apply the same rigid matrix every time, you're going to get very similar outputs. You're also going to impact that with the bias of whoever wrote it or created it in the first place. So a suggestion here is that your assessment team, and this is the innovation board in James's case, but it could be called, whatever it needs to be called in your organization, a level of diversity is absolutely critical. And that should be not just the people themselves, but the grade they're at, their experience, whether they're new to the organization. Roll them in, roll them out over a short 3 to 6 month window so that they are getting experience and going back to the business and talking about this. It's all about cultural change. It's about generating momentum. So it's really important that you understand different points of view and different opinions. Because I could be quite clear that you could put an idea in front of me as a sole view, and I might not necessarily grasp it correctly. I might reject that idea because it doesn't really fit with where my thinking's going or what my need might be at the time, but it might sure as well fit with a 20-year-old who's just doing something new in that stage of their career. So again, this is about making sure that you're listening and taking on different opinions. Equally, in terms of people that you might want to have involved in the board or involved in your innovation itself and managing ideas. So this is moving on from purely filtering the ideas and scoring them, but to actually taking on and doing something with it, is that you need 3 key types of people. You need networkers, and they're often people at a slightly lower level, but they are very well connected. They're the sort of person you can ask, oh yeah, that's such and such in that department, or I was speaking to them the other day, and I went for coffee with this person. And they know a lot of people around the organisation for whatever reason. Also needs the enthusiasts, those who encourage and appreciate new things. So the early adopters, the people who get excited by a new process, a new piece of kit, a new tech, a new app, all those kind of things, who can start to generate positive messages on your internal messaging, whether that's Yammer or some other internal system. Start to talk to people, tell people how wonderful this is going to be. And then you need the influencers, those with the power and the clout to actually make an idea happen. So it's all very well and good that somebody comes up with, so I'll answer that question in a second. It's all very good that the ideas are coming through, but you do need somebody to drive it through as well. So you need to allocate ownership. And these people tend to be a little bit more senior on the influencer level, because they need to have that budget, that clout, that seniority to push things through. Apologies, at lower level, what I meant in terms of organizational structure. So what I didn't pick up on the first 3 bullets is that don't pick your assessment team purely on reputation. Don't go and base your assessment based on one individual who's brilliant in your manufacturing department, or who's brilliant at doing something in finance, or whatever it might be. The reason behind that, they have built a strong reputation of being brilliant at what they do and how they work with things. But they may not be able to see beyond their immediate sphere of knowledge. And actually, real true specialists who are experts are probably more blinkered than a lot of people who've got a broader oversight of the organisation. So the bit that I meant about at lower level, go for people who are in their junior or middle management ranks to kind of form your team. And it also allows you, again, it's about that cycling with the culture through the whole thing. Pavlos, could I have the last one? And again, rushing because I just leave a little bit of time for questions. It isn't a plug and play. Innovation isn't a plug and play process for organisations, as we can see. The tools such as Idea Drop, it's brilliant. It helps facilitate things, but it is not something where you can just run in and drop a process and run away. It needs careful handling. It's a cultural thing. It's a people thing. Co-creation, co-development of ideas is really, really important. You need to give good ideas the opportunity to breathe. You need to allow them to kind of grow, pause, come back, and you need to have that culture that allows you to make mistakes and learn from them and carry on. And ideas are the lifeblood of your innovation capability. But if all you're doing is capturing them and failing to act, so yes, you put them in the funnel, you've done a bit of scoring, but if you don't do anything with them, you are simply servicing the idea, the concept of innovation, and not innovating on your services. So that's it from Pavlos and I in a relatively potted time frame. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.